Karim Khan. He's the prosecutor for the International Criminal Court. He announced today that he's seeking arrest warrants for Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and Defense Minister Yoav Gallant, as well as 3 Hamas terrorists due to allegations of war crimes. And this is how Prime Minister Netanyahu responded.
Mr. Khan creates a twisted and false moral equivalence between the leaders of Israel and the henchmen of Hamas. This is like creating a moral equivalence after September 11th between President Bush and Osama bin Laden, or during World War II between FDR and Hitler.
So he hit it on the head. Folks, it's worth noting that, like the United States, Israel is not a member of the International Criminal Court and does not recognize its jurisdiction. But the broader question is, what will this gesture mean for Israel's ongoing efforts to defeat Hamas? Well, joining me now to discuss this and more is Carolyn Glick. She's the senior contributing editor at the Jewish News Syndicate and host of the Carolyn Glick Show on JNS. Carolyn, always great to have you on Washington Watch. Thanks for joining us.
Oh, thanks so much for having me on your program today.
All right, so overall, your thoughts on the announcement by the ICC?
You know, it's interesting. Not only was Prime Minister Netanyahu correct, I think that he was understanding the problem with the ICC, because what the ICC is doing is actually a war crime in and of itself. Because not only are they threatening to unlawfully kidnap and imprison Israeli leaders because they have no jurisdiction against Israel. So any arrest warrant that they put out against Israel is actually a threat to unlawfully kidnap and incarcerate the Israeli leadership. But it's also a war crime because it provides material support for Hamas. And Hamas is a genocidal terrorist organization that is charter bound to commit a genocide of the Jewish people. That's explicitly what it says in their charter, to kill all of the Jews. So by giving aid and comfort to Hamas, which is what these arrest warrants do, they're facilitating Hamas's achievements of their goal. They're also propagating bigotry and anti-Semitism, because they are propagating a blood libel against Israel and our leaders, alleging falsely that we are deliberately starving and deliberately targeting for murder Palestinian civilians in Gaza. Nothing could be further from the truth. As the UN's own corrected statistics on the death total of Palestinians show, the civilian to terrorist death toll, or actually civilian to militant, if you will, death toll, is the lowest in human history. It's about 1.3 to 1 civilians per terrorist, and that's a lower death toll by far than what the U.S. forces in places like Mosul and Fallujah in Iraq achieved, which was a 4 to 1 civilian to terrorist death toll there. And here it's 1.3 civilians for every terrorist killed. So this is something that's unprecedented in human history. And yet they're propagating this blood libel in order to deny Israel the right to self-defense. So they're giving material support to genocide by enabling Hamas to continue to commit its war of genocide against Israel. They're propagating anti-Semitism, which is also a war crime, and they're doing all of this without jurisdiction because, as you rightly mentioned, Israel, like the United States, is not a signatory to the Rome Treaty. We are not a member of the ICC.
Excellent points there that you bring up, Carolyn. And, you know, we all know there's some political division in Israel, but it is encouraging to see how even political opponents of the prime minister are calling this decision both a moral and diplomatic disaster. The unity, are you seeing that in Israel, that the unified result of this outrageous decision?
Absolutely, because this isn't against Prime Minister Netanyahu or Defense Minister Yoav Gallant. This is against the military of Israel, our soldiers, our sons and daughters, and against our state. Because by pushing forward with this, these prosecutions, not only by making a moral equivalence between Israel and Hamas, which is in and of itself an atrocity, but by pushing forward with these prosecutions, with these arrest warrants, The ICC is saying that Israel has no right to self-defense. Benjamin Netanyahu and Yoav Gallant are not private individuals. They are the democratically elected prime minister and defense minister of Israel. They are the repository of the people's will. They are not there of their own volition. They didn't seize power. They were elected to perform their duties. And by vilifying them, by criminalizing their just actions and leading this country in a war for national survival, the ICC is saying that the Jewish people have no right to self-defense. And when you are surrounded by enemies who are actively seeking to annihilate you, and Israel is fighting a seven-front war today, then what you are saying is that you support the annihilation of the Jewish people. That is why you will find no division among Israelis from the far left to the far right over the injustice and really the atrocity that these arrest warrants and the intention to issue them manifests.
I don't know. I think most people look at this and probably say to themselves that this is not going to have an effect on how Israel continues its war against Hamas. Do you agree with that?
I do agree with that, and I think that Prime Minister Netanyahu has stated that repeatedly in his remarks since late last month when it first was reported that Karim Khan intended to issue these arrest warrants. But I think that this is very dangerous for the rest of the free world, because if they go through with this and they get away with it, if they aren't massively sanctioned and indeed subjected to personal liability and criminal prosecution for their actions, which are unlawful and again constitute war crimes in and of themselves, then they're going to be empowered. Karim Khan and his fellow criminal fake prosecutors at this kangaroo court of the ICC are going to become even more powerful. And they're going to use their newfound power because they've been allowed to get away with this in order to expand the writ of their false prosecutions of democratically elected leaders. They're going after Israeli leaders today because the Jewish state is the only Jewish state and it's internationally isolated. But if they get away with this, then tomorrow they're coming for the American army and American political leaders. There's absolutely no doubt in my mind. They've already tried. And if they succeed with Israel, they'll try it again.
Carolyn Glick, I can't tell you how great it is to have your input and wisdom on all of this. Thank you, as always, for joining us on Washington Watch.